Welcome into the Why You're Wrong Fantasy Football Podcast. It is episode 39. We're going into week 8 of the fantasy football season, and we are officially halfway through fantasy football because with the extra week in the NFL, fantasy championships are happening. Well, playoffs start week 14, so that means we are officially halfway through the regular season. So hopefully you made it through the first 7 weeks without having a terrible record. There's a handful of leagues where I'm not doing so great, but that's why I play in multiple, so that way the good ones make up for the bad ones. How you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing good. I'm 3-4 in every single league. I'm in sixth place in every single league, so it can only either go up or down from here. I'm hoping at least two of my teams make playoffs. I don't think all three will make playoffs, so 3-4 start, but we'll see.
Going into our regular intro, I'm your monotone master. You just heard from our fantasy force here. You can find our podcast on any podcasting platform on Apple and Spotify. You can also watch the show live on YouTube. We're both just in our homes with blurred backgrounds. It's nothing fancy. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok as Why You're Wrong FFB, and also occasionally tweeting during game days on Twitter as You're Wrong FFB. But just getting into some week 7 reaction headlines for me, everyone on my team was on bye, and then all I had left was Darren Waller, and that's just all the managers that just need Darren Waller to start doing something a little bit more because he's putting up average tight end numbers, but you didn't draft him to be average. You drafted him to be top 3, and someone rolls up on him on Friday. He gets an ankle injury, and then his backup gets 50 yards and a touchdown. It's just so tantalizing as a Darren Waller owner right now.
It's crazy because Derek Carr is actually top 5 in passing yards, yet Darren Waller is having such a terrible season. I mean, the injury is definitely a fluke thing, and you can't get by that, but Derek Carr actually being pretty good this season. It's pretty shocking to see that Darren Waller is not even getting to production. It's guys like Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards and Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow has actually been a monster for the Raiders this season, but I think for the second half of the season, if Waller could stay healthy, there's no reason why he shouldn't be a top 5 tight end.
It's like one of those things where it's like it's not really his fault. It's just anytime the past few weeks Derek Carr has tried to connect with him, Derek Carr has just given him the worst targets.
And I wonder if it's just him getting double covered too, because what was in the first game? He got like 16 targets in the first game, and then everything after that has just been downhill. So I'm wondering if teams are taking the TJ Hawkinson approach where they're just double teaming him, and then it's kind of harder to force feed him the ball and try to throw it deep to guys like Henry Ruggs or, across the middle to Hunter Renfrow or something like that.
Which just makes a ton of sense. And then is Deebo Samuel the only relevant player you can play in San Francisco? It's just out of all the receiving options, it was like at one point in the game, it was like 7 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown for Deebo. And then every other option was one target, one target, one target, one target. They did play in a rainbow, though.
Apparently, Kyle Shanahan only likes Deebo Samuel because he will flip-flop every other position other than that. I mean, Elijah Mitchell actually did look pretty good at running back, but Trey Sermon's nowhere to be found. Brandon Ayuk apparently needs to be a better football player, even though he had some breakout rookie numbers last year. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you drafted Deebo Samuel, I mean, you have to be pretty satisfied with the production he's had so far.
And that's just the knife twist because most managers drafted Brandon Ayuk ahead of Deebo Samuel.
And I'm one of them. And I already traded him away from Mark Andrews, so I got away from him while I still could because people still believe in him.
Yeah. I'm also, it's just being a Seahawks fan, it's just a knife twist for me right now because watching Geno Smith be terrible is just, as a Seahawks fan, sucks. And as a Lockett manager, it sucks. And I'm sure for all the DK Metcalf managers, it also sucks too because watching him having to call timeouts because he can't snap the ball in time, watching him hold on to the ball and not make the easy throws and just taking sack after sack after sack is rough because then the Seahawks go around and they run the ball up the middle 4 times in a row. And it's just like, guys, just give him like a 5 short yard drag across the field. Just do something.
Geno Smith actually looked pretty good in the first quarter. And I was like, wait, maybe we should actually give Geno Smith some respect after that 82-yard touchdown to DK Metcalf. And then after the first quarter, everything just went south for him. I don't know what it was. He had that delay of game penalty where he didn't call the timeout. He had a couple sacks like here and there towards the end of the game. Like I think when he gets tired and he realizes that he's under pressure and he has to play from behind, that's where Geno Smith really just isn't the quarterback for the Seahawks in that situation. So
it's just
it is what it is, but Russell will end up coming back at some point.
It was like his first 2 chances. He ended both of those game drive winning opportunities with ugly turnovers. Third time in a row he gets it. incomplete pass, like 10-yard sack, 10-yard sack, and then it's 4th and 28, and it's just like how, like why? Like why is this what we're looking at right now?
I mean, they got to look at Tyler Lockett more. The Seahawks are clearly probably not going to make the playoffs because they play in the hardest division in football, anyways. But I mean, even with Russell Wilson too, I don't even know if the Seahawks make the playoffs regardless. The Cardinals are very good. The 49ers are, I guess. And then I mean, you got the Rams too, which is it's just kind of impossible for the Seahawks to make the playoffs this year. So I mean, might as well just roll with Geno Smith as long as you can because there's not many backup options out there at the moment.
The only chance they really have is if Russell comes back and then they go 7-0 and somehow end the year at like 9-8 or nine and whatever, 9-8 or like 10 and like whatever the option is for the new amount of games this year, and they make it in as that last wild card spot. But with the way some of these other NFC teams are playing, I just don't see it happening.
I don't either. I mean, and to my point, my week 6 reaction headline is that the Cardinals actually really have a good chance at going undefeated this entire season because, I mean, this week they play Thursday Night Football. Devontae Adams has COVID. He might not end up playing this week. So I think the Cardinals have an absolute easy win this week. I mean, could be wrong because Aaron Rodgers is still on the field and you can never doubt him. Aaron Jones could go for 5 touchdowns. You really don't know. But they play the Packers this week. If they win this game, they go on to play San Fran. San Fran's not looking like the team to the best team out there, and then they go on to play Carolina, and they play your boys, the Seattle Seahawks. It's an easy one against Geno. They play Chicago, 5 turnover Justin Fields over there. I believe they play the Rams in the mix. So that'll be another test, and then they play Detroit and Indy. So they might really go undefeated throughout the rest of the season. I think their toughest test is the Rams, and if they can get through the Rams and the Packers, there's no reason why they shouldn't end up winning every single game, if not losing one of those games in between.
They also already dismantled the Rams too once already this year. So,
so I mean, Kyler Murray's looking like a beast. Hopkins looking like a beast. James Conner is actually looking like a pretty good running back along with Chase Edmonds too. So I wouldn't be surprised. Everyone's doubting the Cardinals, not really talking about them as Super Bowl contenders, but I think it's start to actually, considering them as Super Bowl contenders along with, the Bills, the Rams, and all these other teams out there and the Bucs.
I'd be super okay with the Cardinals winning it all if Larry Fitzgerald is allowed to come back for like playoffs. Like you give him he doesn't just let him on the field for a few plays, let him technically be part of the team, and he gets a ring to just finally walk away with. That'd be the most beautiful ending to his career.
I don't think he'd be satisfied with that Super Bowl ring. As much as he probably wants it, I don't think he'd be satisfied because he didn't do anything to actually earn it. But I do agree with where you're coming from.
No, just let him come back.
Just let him come back for one play, one snap.
He's done so many other things for the organization throughout years where it's he gets an honorary season and then he deserves that ring.
He does. I mean, he's definitely one of the best wide receivers to ever play the game. He's easy Hall of Famer, no doubt in my mind. He's already been to a Super Bowl, made an absolute amazing play in the Super Bowl, but just never came down because Santonio Holmes just ruined his day. But my other point, the Chiefs, they're in some trouble. They're in some big trouble, and I don't think Patrick Mahomes' turnovers is the reason for why they're doing so bad. I personally believe that their offensive line is just awful and their defense is worse than it's ever been in their entire lives. And Tyreek Hill too, he's dropping passes. I mean, Travis Kelce's doing pretty well over there. No Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There's just a lot of things that's going wrong with the Chiefs, and I mean, there's no way that they are going to be Super Bowl contenders if they keep this up.
I just think it's kind of funny how everyone hated on Clyde Edwards-Helaire for not being vital to the offense, but since the week he's gone down, the Chiefs have been even worse because trying to figure out if it's going to go to Damian Williams or Jerick McKinnon has not been easy for that team.
It's just a troubling team right now. I mean, the Bills are absolutely running through the AFC and the Bengals too. The Bengals are actually number 1 in the AFC, aren't they? Or is it still the Bills right now? Are they both 5-2 or are the Bills 6-1? I'm not really sure.
I can't think off the top of my head, but the one thing that comes to mind is a trade we saw earlier, which a lot of our league instantly vetoed, but I was very hesitant about vetoing it because honestly, I don't want to say it, but I kind of believe that let me just start. The trade was Justin Herbert and Jamar Chase for Keenan Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and everyone thought it'd be unfair to be giving away Patrick Mahomes and Keenan Allen, but right now, Justin Herbert and Jamar Chase look like the better half of that trade.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at it, the overall people in the trade, when you look at Keenan Allen and Patrick Mahomes, they're both technically better before this trade actually happened. But Jamar Chase is actually probably going to break rookie records. Probably going to break Jefferson's rookie record from last season. He's going to win Rookie of the Year. So if it were to be now that trade to happen, I'd say that's probably the better half of the trade because Herbert and Chase are better. But at the time, it just didn't look good on paper.
I'm sorry, Jake. That was everyone tried to give you a hard time for that trade, but I mean, if I tried to go against it, my one voice would have just been it would have been a little like you did this last year to Jake. So
Yeah, exactly. I
that's why I
mean, we
couldn't
all
say
know
anything.
with his trade, so anything could happen, and it usually doesn't go in his favor. So this is the one time that he was right, and we apologize as a league. And then my last point actually is that fantasy football can be cruel. I lost by 2 points in two leagues due to fluke plays with a DK Metcalf 82-yard touchdown and a garbage time, not even garbage time because they were winning, and a Michael Pittman touchdown. So anything can happen in fantasy football. You could have the best team in the world, but you could lose by 1 point on just one fluke play. And it's just something to be cautious of because it could really wear and tear your team.
Let's just move on. For a perfect example is our Devil's Advocate team, which we have been beating all season except for this week where they just exploded and just embarrassed both of us. So did Brian, the number one QB on the week was our most hated man, Tua, followed by Mike Evans and Jamar Chase, who also had incredible weeks. Jonathan Taylor, Miles Sanders did get hurt. Zach Ertz had a great week. Melvin Gordon outdid his projection. And this team finished with 131 points, where we barely did anything. I only got to 62 this week, and you got to 74. So we took heavy losses to this team that we just don't like in general.
Hey, to be fair, it was apocalypse, and none of these guys had buys, so I'm gonna blame it on that. And they did have a good week. Well,
Yeah.
I'll give them that they did have a good week, but at the same time, I had probably 20 buys across 3 of my leagues, so I'm not gonna get too upset about it.
So some impactful news as we saw Miles Sanders get carted off. They're still undergoing an MRI, trying to figure out how severe that ankle injury is. Devontae Adams, as you mentioned earlier, will not be playing this Thursday because he's been placed on the COVID list. And Zach Wilson is going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks for the Jets, which means they're going to be an even easier matchup to target.
So who ends up playing QB for the Jets? Is it Joe Flacco or is it the other guy, Mike White, that came in for the Jets at the end of the game? He was actually not looking too bad. I mean, I started Corey Davis as a flyer shot just because I had 4 starting wide receivers on bye this week. But he didn't look too bad, so I'm going to be surprised who they end up actually going with.
I think he got real lucky with that touchdown right after Wilson got injured.
I mean, Joe Flacco has been on the team before. He knows the playbook. He's a veteran, but do you really trust Joe Flacco to even, do anything for your team?
Nothing. No.
I might go with the younger guy with Mike White. I actually don't even know how old Mike White is. I don't think anyone who watches football even knew who he was until he ended up playing a snap for the Jets.
No, I think it was like his first like NFL snap too. Like it's like one of those things where like after Wilson gets hurt and then like Mike White's going in who's not played in an NFL game yet. It's like you have a rookie quarterback and your backup quarterback isn't an NFL veteran. Like, what are you guys doing?
He's 26 years old and he played at Southern Florida and Western Kentucky. So I guess he's not that bad, but at the same time, he's a little bit older. I'd still go with him over Joe Flacco if I had the chance because Joe Flacco is just god awful.
Yeah. So I just want to talk about Miles Sanders for a second because we all knew like throughout the season that if anything would happen to him, Kenneth Gainwell would break out. And it kind of breaks my heart because I've had Kenneth Gainwell on some of my benches, but had to release him due to other injuries. And now he's going to be the big hot pickup of the week. So we can talk about him later. But also, Devontae Adams being out means Aaron Rodgers is going to have to lean on someone else. So that's why I want to talk about my tight end streamer who we'll talk in depth a little bit later. But Robert Tonyan could be in for a big week this week versus Arizona.
I mean, Devontae Adams is not indefinitely out yet. He needs to have 2 negative COVID tests within within Tuesday and Wednesday. So it needs to happen today and tomorrow in order to be able to play Thursday. So if he comes back positive today, then he's indefinitely out on Thursday. But there's a slight chance that he still ends up playing. But if not, people like Robert Tonyan and some of the other Packers wide receivers that we'll get into later could be pretty good threats for this week.
All right, so we'll talk about some stud muffins right now. So this week was very random. So Matthew Stafford has been killing it all year at 27. Joe Burrow, who was a fantastic pickup for a lot of people this week, 27.5. Then Tua, 28.5 against the Falcons. It just feels like he gets so many garbage points. Like him and Jalen Hurts are the same player at this point.
You want to know something? I was actually gonna pick up Tua, but I couldn't get myself to come on this podcast and say that I started Tua Tagovailoa. And when I've been downing him the entire year, I really wanted to start him so bad, and I was going to pick him up, but I knew you were going to end up chirping me, or someone else is going to chirp me because I've been downplaying him all year. That's all I'm
Okay,
going to say.
so will you give him the benefit of the doubt after this episode and admit that you would be willing to stream him, or are you still going to go all year without touching him?
No, I'd be willing to stream him in the right matchup. If he plays the Atlanta Falcons again, he plays the Jets. If he plays any of these bottom 5 teams like Houston, sure, I'll consider streaming him. But against a good defense, no, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm staying away from him.
Continuing on, Damian Harris had an awesome day versus the Jets with 24. DeAndre Swift, I'm going to talk about later, 24. Alvin Kamara had an amazing day versus the Seahawks at 28.9. Could have had more, but the Seahawks were like, we should probably double cover him with both linebackers.
I mean, after 10 catches and 110 yards I think it was 8 catches, 110 yards at halftime receiving, they were like, okay, we need to do something right now.
Yeah. Wide receivers, Mike Evans had 3 touchdowns and had 28.6 points. Jamar Chase had an amazing 82-yard run. He looked like Lamar Jackson playing against Lamar Jackson on that catch, where it looks like he broke 4 tackles and ran for 80 yards. Then Cooper Kupp continuing to do what he does, 32.6. You want to hit the other half?
Cooper Kupp has 82 catches on the year already. He's actually might break the all-time wide receiver record for yards and touchdowns, which is just absolutely crazy, especially with the extra game in the NFL season. It's absolutely nuts. But for tight ends, we had Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki has actually pulled around. He's got 18 points this week. He's had double-digit points, I believe, in the last 4 or 5 weeks with Tua and with Jacoby Brissett as well. So he's really turned the season around. What did he have? No targets in the first game. I think he had 1 target in the first game, no catches. Everyone thought that he was going to have a terrible season, but he's really turning around, and he's honestly starting to look like a top 6 tight end right now, which is really pleasing to see.
He's kind of just taking Devontae Parker's job, to be honest.
Yeah, he has. And I mean, a lot of these guys are going to end up getting healthy again, and they're probably going to start running the ball a little bit more. But right now, Tua loves Mike Gesicki, so if you have him, I'd start him with all confidence right now. But other than that, we had Kyle Pitts with 19.8. Now, Kyle Pitts is also emerging into a pretty good tight end right now. They're starting to put him out at wide receiver too, really making him more like a versatile player where he's not just on the line all the time, but he also can wide out on wide receiver and go deep on deep routes, which is really good to see. And then CJ Uzama with 22.6. That man is either 1 point or 30 points. Joe Burrow just loves to find him on deep crossing routes, and he is just absolutely explosive. I mean, I wouldn't recommend starting him because, again, you'll probably end up getting 1 point next week. But you got to pick and choose when he's going to end up getting those 20 to 30-point weeks because he can do it. And then go ahead.
And he just takes it to the house whenever he wants. Like, it just feels like whenever he throws deep, it's either Jamar Chase or this guy in the end zone.
It's literally every time. It's either Chase or CJ Uzama. I mean, Tyler Boyd is just taking the back seat. I mean, next guy up is probably T. Higgins, but Tyler Boyd is kind of fancy irrelevant at this point. And then for our kickers, we had Nick Folk with 14, Austin Cyber with 15, Graham Cano with 15. Kickers can't really choose. I mean, it's kind of tough to choose who the best kickers are going to end up being. And defense, we had Giants with 17, Titans with 17, and the Bills with 21.
Also, Bucks.
Bucks. Sorry, Bucks.
I missed the C.
I don't know why I said Bills.
The Bills were on bye, but actually, speaking about the Bills, I just wanted to bring them up. Have you realized that this is like another time that a defense playing against Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City has finished as a top 3 defense on the week?
Yeah, I mean, it is shocking to see, but the Bills actually are the best defense in the NFL, in my opinion, right now. So if you can keep them on your team for no matter what the matchup is, I feel like they're like the Steelers from last year, or was it? Yeah, it was last year. Like you can just start the Bills against anyone. They're matchup proof. It doesn't really matter. They could play any of the top teams, and they'll probably end up getting 8 to 10 points. So if you still have the Bills on your team, I would keep them for as long as possible and just keep on starting them because they literally look like the Steelers from last year.
Yeah, but like the Steelers from last year, they crapped the bed pretty badly. So we got to talk about some duds. A lot of problem is with bye weeks, you were hoping for a lot, but you had a lot of disappointments. Antonio Gibson had another bad week, 6.6. Darrell Henderson, 7.9. Aaron Jones, 6.4. Alex Collins, who's people were hoping could be a valid streaming option with Carson being out, 4.9. We saw Miles Sanders get hurt. AJ Dillon finished with negative points at minus 0.7. Our starting Falcons running back Mike Davis had a single point, and then Damian Williams against a bad Tennessee defense only had 6.5.
I can't believe, thing about Aaron Jones is he only had 6.4. I think he's one of the biggest buy low candidates right now. I don't know if that's just me. I mean, I still believe in Aaron Jones. I feel like it was game scripted for him to not do that well last game, but Aaron Jones is still going to have those 30 to 40-point games, and I truly believe it. So if you're looking for a desperate RB, if you have like Antonio Gibson and you don't feel good about his shin injury, maybe try to package Gibson with another receiver and maybe try to trade for Aaron Jones because I think he might explode in the second half of the season.
No, Gibson's for him is just the injuries I think he has at the moment aren't just going to go away. They're going to linger the entire season, if not getting worse, which is just really disappointing for what he could have been this season. I think it's just he's going to be very frustrating for managers to hold on to for the rest of the year.
I mean, I'm honestly kind of just hoping that they kind of shut him down so I can start JD McKissick because JD McKissick can be versatile in that offense.
But we had a handful of receiver busts. It's hard to gauge wide receiver busts because they're so inconsistent, but Julio Jones, you're hoping for a better day besides 4.8 versus Kansas City. Tim Patrick had a terrible time versus the Browns. Caught a touchdown but got pushed out of bounds, but only gave you 2.6 points. Amon-Ra St. Brown goosed you. So for those who spent up on Fab for Amon-Ra St. Brown, we were pretty disappointed.
Khalif Raymond was definitely the guy for the Lions this week.
Yeah. Then Brandon Cooks had 4.6, the PPR monster that everyone we know him as was hoping for did not come through this week.
Yeah, I started Brandon Cooks also because I had a lot of receivers out and I was very disappointed in Brandon Cooks. I mean, Davis Mills he's just not it. So you just got to kind of hope for Brandon Cooks to have an easy matchup and start him then. But from where Brandon Cooks started at the beginning of the season until now, it's not looking too hot.
Then on the quarterback side, we got Patrick Mahomes, who had his worst career game ever at 8.7. Jared Goff had a terrible day versus old team 13. But do you want to talk about this other candidate, which you unfortunately got forced into?
Yeah, Sam Darnold with 3.4 points. Had Jameis Winston in my lineup. I saw that there was going to be rain on Monday Night Football. I was like, okay, Sam Darnold's got rushing upside. He's been locking in with DJ Moore over the past couple of weeks. Hasn't been doing too solid, around like 12 to 13 points. But I'm like, you know what? A game against the Giants, Panthers should end up winning this game. I'm going to start Sam Darnold. I'm going to pick him up, and then we'll see what happens. End up getting 3.4 points. I will never start Sam Darnold again, nor will I even look at him in the waiver wire. I hope he is dropped by every team in fantasy football. I hope he has like a 1% ownership after this because I would rather start Joe Flacco over Sam Darnold any day of the week.
It was just bad. Like when you get replaced in the fourth quarter, that's not a good look.
Yeah, I mean, Jameis did have a terrible day too, so I can't really get that mad, but Sam Darnold had an even worse day, and PJ Walker didn't even do that great when Sam Darnold came in too, but he is just not a good quarterback. He's looking like the Jets form right now. It's not looking great.
Then tight end Noah Fant also had a bad day versus the Browns, 6.4. Mark Andrews, not the best day either versus the Bengals at 6.3. And then I threw OJ Howard up on this board because he was my last second pivot with Darren Waller being out. And I wasn't chasing the touchdown. I was chasing the 7 targets from last week. And he had 3 targets for 9 yards in total. And Tom Brady threw 6 touchdowns. Like, bro, come on. Like, give OJ Howard 1 touchdown, please.
Yeah, you can blame Mike Evans and the rest of the squad there because he just – I mean, I had faith in OJ Howard too. It's the OJ Howard and Cameron Brate combo there when Gronk's out. It always looks good on paper, but you never know what Brady's going to end up doing because he spreads the ball out way too much.
Yeah, and it's like he spreads it out throughout weeks. It's not like he spreads it out in one game. It's like every game he's like, you're going to catch 3 touchdowns and nothing for anyone else. And the next game, I'm going to pick this other receiver to focus on, and then you just have Chris Godwin sitting there who gets like a decent amount of targets no matter what. But it's like either Antonio Brown goes off or Mike Evans goes off. They can't all go off.
Yeah, it's safe to say that OJ Howard can be dropped in most leagues unless if you haven't picked that up yet.
Yeah. But moving on to some flex pickups, so your wide receivers and running backs for week 8. So I'm going with Kadarius Toney, and if he's not there, maybe Sterling Shepard is there because those are the 2 Giants receivers that have been proven reliable all season long. And they are playing Kansas City, who is the worst defense on paper right now because of how many points they've been letting up. So if Daniel Jones has to sling it to someone, it's going to be one of these two guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. I hope Kadarius Toney actually does come back. I had to drop him last week just due to buys, but I think that if he can stay healthy, he's going to be really, really, really good for the rest of the season. So if you have him on your bench, honestly, I consider starting him at a flex because this week against KC could be a very high scoring game considering the Chiefs, in the previous weeks.
Right. Then I also have Marquise Callaway versus the Bucks. Same kind of thought process where the Bucks have a terrible secondary right now, and the Saints are going to have to throw the ball to win. Kamara's not getting through this front seven on the ground. We did see a handful of targets go to Callaway in the rain game, and he also had a red zone look, but the linebacker blocked it at the last second. So he could be a good streaming option if you're desperate at wide receiver this week.
Yeah, I could see him catching like a 70-yard touchdown, but other than that, I don't really know. The Bucks could also do what they did to Justin Fields and just absolutely obliterate the Saints. So we'll see what happens there. But my flex pickup is Allen Lazard if Devontae Adams is out. I think Allen Lazard is probably going to be the top wide receiver pickup for the week. Again, if Devontae Adams does have COVID and he doesn't play, because I believe MBS Marquise Valdez-Scantling is still dealing with a hamstring injury. And then other than that, it's Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb, has been getting a lot of looks from Aaron Rodgers, but Allen Lazard's definitely the guy to go to in this offense, along with Robert Tonyan, and probably like 30 carries to Aaron Jones too, just if Devontae Adams is out. And then my other one is KJ Osborne against Dallas. They play Sunday Night Football, I believe, in Minnesota. It's going to be coming off a bye week. It's going to be a very high scoring game, I believe, probably upwards of 60 to 70 points. So I'd expect KJ Osborne to at least catch a touchdown in this one in a Sunday night duel with Dallas.
Honestly, this just came to mind since the Cowboys have played the Patriots. Do the Cowboys play the Bills this year? Do we get a Diggs versus Diggs matchup?
We do. We have to because AFC East, they already played the Patriots, but they haven't played the Jets yet either. I don't think they've played a lot of AFC East teams. They might have played the Dolphins already. I'm not really sure, but
I'm gonna check this right now because
they're
it
gonna
could be like
they're gonna end up having to play with the Bills at some point. So let's see, Cowboys versus Bills, November 28th. Which is about a month from now. So we got the Diggs matchup.
I think is that no, that's not. That's Thanksgiving week, but not Thanksgiving Day.
Correct.
But moving on to running backs, so my pick is the obvious one of the week: Kenneth Gainwell versus Detroit. Detroit sucks, and Kenneth Gainwell might be the RB1. Now, the one thing I just want to mention is it does not mean Kenneth Gainwell might have a 30-point game because we all know Tim Tebow, or as we like to call him now, Jalen Hurts, could easily just do what he's been doing to Miles Sanders to Kenneth Gainwell, where it's like you're expecting him to get the touchdown and then Jalen Hurts sneaks it in the fourth quarter.
Yes, Kenneth Gainwell is probably going to be the guy to go to because the Lions are that terrible. But also with my pick, I had Boston Scott solely because I'm not sure who's going to end up getting more points in this game. Kenneth Gainwell is probably the guy to go to in this situation, but I feel like Boston Scott's also a pretty good flex streamer for this week as well, considering that they're playing the Lions and will probably score 40 points.
And I've also got Ty Johnson just because we still see the Jets backfield being split between Michael Carter and Ty Johnson. Ty did fall in for a touchdown, but got called back due to the penalty. So it's not a pretty option, but if you had to stream a running back, he might be there, and it's not going to be pretty if you have to.
And mine's on the opposite side of the field with Samaje Perine. Joe Mixon's probably going to end up having a great game here, but I expect the Bengals to go up 30-0 real early. And I think they start putting in the backups, and Samaje Perine has found the end zone, I think, 3 of the last 4 weeks or something like that. So he's been pretty good as a backup so far. They do use him a good amount, even in games where it's close. So if you're looking for a guy, I'd probably throw Samaje Perine in your lineup because it's going to be a bloodbath for the Bengals.
And then moving on to some streamers at the other positions. For quarterback, my pick is Kirk Cousins versus Dallas. Kirk has surprisingly been a top 10 quarterback this year, which is just mind-boggling for fantasy. It really just comes down to if Dalvin Cook is in the lineup, Kirk Cousins probably has a good game. Now, does he get a 30-burger versus the Cowboys, who've been good on defense this year? Maybe not, but I can easily see Kirk getting you another 20 points this week.
Yeah, I know. There's some couple quarterbacks out there. I believe Lamar Jackson is out on bye. I have Lamar in one of my leagues, so Kirk Cousins is someone I'm definitely eyeing for this week against Dallas. Clearly, it's going to be a high-scoring game. I have full faith in Kirk Cousins to get over 3.8 points like Sam Darnold. So I'm hoping that he has a pretty good game, but he's probably the top QB waiver wire pickup for the week. And then with my pick, I chose Carson Wentz against Tennessee. Don't absolutely love it, but Carson Wentz has sneakily in the last 6 weeks had over 17 fantasy points and is actually looking a lot better. He's looking like his Eagles form in the last couple of weeks. Tennessee's defense did look really, really good last week against the Chiefs. So I wouldn't be surprised if Carson Wentz has a not so great game. But I think that with his rushing upside and the way he's been playing lately, with Jonathan Taylor running the ball too, I think you should probably have somewhere between 15 to 20 points if you're looking for a QB.
And then at tight end, my pick, if he's on the waiver wire option, is Robert Tonyan, because some people might have dropped him after his horrific start to the year. But last year, when Devontae Adams was out, Robert Tonyan had a 3-touchdown game. So he might be a focal point for Aaron Rodgers to key in on if Devontae Adams actually does not play. But this year, he's basically just been touchdown or bust, really not being a key constant part of this offense, just being the open guy who gets a pass if no one's on him.
Yeah, Tanyan's probably going to have a great game if Adams is out. Again, it's going to be Alan Lazard and Robert Tonyan who are going to get the majority of the load. And I don't really see Randall Cobb doing too much. I mean, he might get a couple catches here and there, but from a touchdown standpoint, Tanyan probably will catch one if Adams is out. And then my pick is Tyler Conklin. He's the Minnesota Vikings tight end. Again, I'm thinking big things for this game. I think Kirk Cousins is going to have a great game. Justin Jefferson, all the Cowboys receivers. It's going to be really high scoring. So Tyler Conklin could probably catch a touchdown this game, but again, that's just for something if your tight end's on a bye or if you have Darren Waller, he's out for another week, and you need some tight end to start. Tyler Conklin could be that guy for you.
Darren Waller is on bye this week, so another tight end I
Oh,
want
he
to
is
throw
on
out
bye.
there.
Right.
You could also do Jared Cook, who has been relevant. It seems to be Jared Cook is relevant when Mike Williams isn't. Also, you could also throw in Pat Freiermuth, who has seen a lot more targets come his way. He's taken over the Heath Miller role in that offense that they had years ago because it's a very similar kind of player. With Juju being out and Chase Claypool also dealing with injuries, Pat Freiermuth has kind of taken over the middle of the field after Deontay Johnson's the first look on the outside.
Yeah, they drafted him to be that new guy, that new tight end for the Steelers too. So he's going to end up emerging into a pretty good tight end. But then again, if Ben Roethlisberger can't throw the ball, is he really going to be that good?
Yeah, man. The Steelers are going to love this offense when you add Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers to it next year.
Imagine if that happens.
Yeah, but at defense, I'm picking the Bengals versus the Jets mainly just because you're a bad team with a backup quarterback, and that's just an easy matchup. So if they're on a waiver wire, definitely try to pick them up.
Same boat for me. I'm taking Seattle versus Jacksonville. It's a not so great defense, but anytime someone plays Jacksonville, Jets, or Houston, you kind of have to, pray that they're going to end up putting at least 8 points. So I'm feeling
What about
Seattle?
would you play Jacksonville versus Seattle?
You could play Jacksonville versus Seattle too. I don't think it's going to be a very high scoring game whatsoever. I think it's going to probably be less than 40 points, if so. My only problem is James Robinson's probably one of the better players in this matchup. So Seattle could get burned by James Robinson. But on the flip side, you got Geno Smith, who didn't look so great against the Saints defense at home in Seattle. So it's a toss-up. So if you want to either start Seattle or Jacksonville, go for it because they're honestly not bad. They're both not bad options for this week.
One thing that was honestly really weird about Seattle's game last night is it felt like they just leaned on Rashad Penny for 80% of the game because we saw Alex Collins handle the first drive, got 4 carries for 9 yards. And then it was Rashad Penny for like 3.5 quarters. And then he got less than a fantasy point, did absolutely nothing. I mean, and that's also more on Geno Smith being bad. But they went back to Alex Collins afterwards. He finished with about 5 fantasy points. It was just kind of frustrating if you're leaning on Alex Collins to still be keeping you up for an RB2 or flex play this week. So it's like, guys, we get that you're trying to put Rashad Penny back into the backfield, but just give it the ball to Alex Collins, please.
Yeah, I think Alex Collins' bad day was also because the Saints have the second best rush defense in the NFL too. So I think moving forward, Alex Collins will have better days. I think he will have a pretty good day against Jacksonville and will probably end up scoring, might get over 10 fantasy points. So I wouldn't be too worried about Alex Collins.
Then since we're at the halfway point of the season, Brian, I think we got to talk about some players that we need to apologize to or take a different outlook on the season with, because what a difference it makes after 7 weeks of football compared to what we thought and the information we were going on at the beginning of the season. So I think we should go back to back on these. So I'll start with mine.
Let's do it.
So my first pick for this is DeAndre Swift, who is the running back 3 on the season. And it's just like, I think this is something that every fantasy analyst and every fantasy player needs to give an apology to DeAndre Swift to. Kind of just like, it wasn't you, it was what your team was doing to you at the beginning of the season. It was just you signed Jamal Williams, which isn't a good look for a decent amount of money. Then you have all this coach speak saying, oh, it's going to be a 50-50 workload. We don't know how much DeAndre Swift can actually handle. Then you're also dealing with a groin injury. And you're on a terrible team, which is just a bad recipe for success for fantasy running backs. But as we have seen, the Lions are so bad that they just give the ball to DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson because they're the only two good players on their team. And since they play 4 quarters of garbage time, DeAndre Swift has just been lighting it up in the receiving game.
Yeah, DeAndre Swift is turning out to be very, very good for fantasy football, and I think it's because of his receiving upside. He has that kind of Alvin Kamara to him, but at the same time, it's always just from garbage time. So he's always going to be that garbage time fantasy football player. But if he stays healthy and he doesn't have any of these injuries, because that's a big thing about DeAndre Swift. He started off an injury to start the season. He got injured last year too, so he's never really been able to stay healthy. But if he can stay healthy, his receiving upside makes him such a good fantasy football player. And again, from the reports and everything that we saw at the beginning of the season, we didn't say a lot of good things about him. But as things have been going on, Jamal Williams really isn't that guy, and DeAndre Swift is kind of the main focal point of the offense. And my pick, oh God, Jonathan Taylor.
Do you need to take a deep breath?
I need to take a deep breath. It hurts to say. I mean, I've always thought that Jonathan Taylor had a lot of talent. He was very good at Wisconsin. He was one of the best RBs in college football at the time. Came into the league. I only downplayed him because he had, I believe, 4 games where he had like 150 plus yards at the end of the season, which really, boosted his stats. So I never really thought he was terrible. I just always thought that with Nyheim Hines and Marlon Mack coming back this season, he wasn't going to get the workload that he was going to get. I was wrong. They don't even use either of them. Marlon Mack's about to get traded to a different team. Nyheim Hines barely even sees the field. So Jonathan Taylor is getting receiving work and he's getting rushing work. He's super fast, big running back, RB2 on the season right now. It's tough to say. He'll probably end up staying as a top 10 running back if he can stay healthy. I don't really know what else to say about Jonathan Taylor because I do hate him still, but he is pretty good.
It was just like the sentiment was that he beat up really bad on bad teams last year to end the season. So it's like, oh, he clearly just had an easy set of matchups. And also, I think part of it could be due to they are trying to move Marlon Mack, and that also now they see the talent of Jonathan Taylor. Maybe it's also that without Phillip Rivers, maybe preferred Nyheim Hines because Phillip Rivers was the dump off king. Now they have Carson Wentz, who really doesn't dump it off, so they want a bigger, stronger back in there to help support him, sort of situation. And a lot of his production has come off of really massive, big chunk plays too.
I mean, this season, John Taylor's had, I think, 3 80-plus yard plays too. So it is still the same narrative from last season. But at the same time, he is a pretty good running back to have. I mean, he's far and away an RB1 in fantasy football right now. So if you did draft him, you doubted the haters, you doubted me because I do hate him. You're in good luck right now because he's looking like a beast for the rest of the season.
Another guy that we got to talk about is Jamar Chase, who is the wide receiver 2 right now. So the story with Jamar Chase was that coming into the season, top 5 overall pick, got drafted by the team that his college quarterback was on, who was pounding the table for him. But all the negative points were he missed a year of football because he sat out, was struggling to get separation in camp, looked terrible during the preseason. So he was drifting between that 5th and 7th round for fantasy. So where he was going is you're taking him as your wide receiver 2, and there's a lot of unknowns. So it was kind of scary taking him where he was, and then he fell a little bit. And then literally since week 1, all the fake reports of him not being able to catch the ball finally surfaced as rumors. And he's just been lighting up NFL defenses since. At first it was, he's just catching these long, lucky breakaway touchdowns because he was getting 4 catches, 2 touchdowns for 80 yards. But now he's just molded into a true number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. and making this Bengals offense looking scary.
Yeah, it's crazy that that report about him not being able to catch balls lowered his draft stock so much. And we were high on Jamar Chase too before we even started doing a lot of this pre-work. We thought Jamar Chase was going to be a beast. We knew it. And then the report came out that, he's struggling in the offense, struggling to pick up plays, can't see the ball. And then everything just started going downhill. We're like, all right, maybe Jamar Chase isn't that guy. We were wrong. He
Yeah.
was undoubtedly meant to go as the first wide receiver in the draft. No doubt was supposed to go number 5 overall. The Bengals made the right choice. Him and Burrow are going to light it up this year. Bengals will probably make the playoffs. Jamar Chase is going to win Rookie of the Year, break rookie records. So in that turn, if you got Jamar Chase, you're welcome. And then my pick is Mike Evans. Mike Evans, we always knew Mike Evans was going to be a wide receiver, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in fantasy football. But our biggest doubt with him was that he always has these big games and then he has these terrible games. I think this season we're already through 7 weeks and he's only had 2 bad games. I think he had 2 games with 3 points, but at the same time, he's had double digits in every other game other than that. I thought we thought that AB coming into the offense, a little bit more of an increased role this year, which has been true. AB has been an absolute monster for this team, but Tom Brady is absolutely lighting it up, throwing 5 to 6 touchdowns a game. He looks for Mike Evans all the time within the red zone. So I think that Mike Evans is going to continue to be a beast. And I know that we had our doubts with him going into the draft. We didn't really want to draft Bucs wide receivers. The only person at the ADP that we actually get was probably AB because it was such a steal. But if you end up getting Mike Evans, I think that he's going to end up being a beast for the rest of the season as long as Brady keeps feeding him the ball, which I think he will.
Honestly, I don't think the recipe has really changed. Like he doesn't get an amazing target share. It's just since Brady is throwing so many more touchdowns, Mike Evans is having bigger boom games than he had the year before. In the sense where you still have games where he catches 2 touchdowns or he gets you nothing. It's the same this year, but he's been catching so many more touchdowns in those big games that when you get a 4-point week from Mike Evans, it's okay because the following week he gets a 28-point week.
It's crazy. Ever since he's been in the league, he's always gotten over 1,000 yards and 10 plus touchdowns. And I mean, he's definitely on pace to do it now this season. I think he already has I believe he has 6 or 7 touchdowns right now. And he has around 500, 600 receiving yards. So he's easily going to end up breaking that. Mike Evans is a solid pick regardless, but we just thought the ball was going to be, diverse across the offense a little bit more. But again, that was proven to be wrong.
And the third guy on my list is Marquise Hollywood Brown, who's the wide receiver 6 on the season. And my biggest thing with him at the beginning of the season was the Ravens have a small amount of passing volume to go around with the way that their offense goes. Lamar likes to look at Mark Andrews, and then you had additions of Sammy Watkins. They drafted Rashad Bateman. And it was just like, there's now more mouths to feed in the smallest offensive pie. I don't want anything to do with this. And since I traded him to you in our redraft last year, in 13 games, he has caught 12 touchdowns, and he's been on fire this season. And the Ravens have just showed us they're now a passing team too. But I wonder if it also has to do with the fact that they've lost 3 running backs before the season started. And they're not super confident in the running backs they have right now to carry the workload that they normally do. So I wonder if this has forced them to become a more pass-heavy team, and Hollywood Brown has been benefiting from it.
I mean, I can't say anything bad about Hollywood Brown because I knew that he was going to break out at the end of last season. I knew he was going to be a beast this season. If you watch anything or if you follow any of the Ravens, you know that Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown are best friends, probably closer than any other duo in the entire NFL. They literally drive to practice together. They drive to games together. They sit next to each other on team flights. They sit next to each other on the bench. They are the absolute best friends. There's no way Lamar Jackson's not going to throw Marquise Brown the ball. So I'm not surprised that he's absolutely blown up this season. He's catching these long touchdowns. But I am a little concerned that as the season goes on, Rashad Bateman is going to get a larger role. Mark Andrews is going to get a larger role, and things are going to start clicking for the offense. But for now, Marquise Brown has been an absolute stud. So I can't say I didn't tell you so.
Yeah.
And then finally, with my last pick is Derrick Henry. I think that we all thought a little bit of doubt with Derrick Henry going into the season. He's the RB1 right now, on pace to score 24 touchdowns and run for over 2,000 yards. He looks like Barry Sanders in his prime. He looks like Adrian Peterson in his prime. Might go down as the best running back of all time if he continues up this. But I think the biggest thing with Derrick Henry is that we were concerned about his workload. He came off a great season. We didn't know if he was going to get a lot of passing work in this offense. We were mistaken. He does get passing works. He gets screen passes, goes for 70 yards and a touchdown. So Derrick Henry has been an absolute monster. The narrative around him going into the season was definitely incorrect. Probably should have taken him first overall, and he probably will be the first overall pick going forward after this season. So if you got Derrick Henry and you question you moved away all the haters, I think you're pretty satisfied with him right now.
Honestly, I think next year it's going to be between Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara, because the thing is, the narratives against Derrick Henry, even though he's proven them all wrong this year, they're still going to just continue to grow even more, because it's another year after a high volume year. It's another year he's older. It's another year that historically running backs like him should fall off a cliff, versus Alvin Kamara, who he's the passing monster. He's now the focal point of his team. He can run on the ground. He can catch through the air. So I think it's going to be a coin flip between those two, depending on who's at the number 1 and number 2 pick.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think Derrick Henry, there's got to be some type of doubt that he hasn't been injured once since coming into the league too. He is just an absolute boulder of a guy. So I don't see him getting injured anytime soon. I don't wish injury upon anyone, but with running backs we've seen before in the past, star running backs do have a catastrophic injury that does put them down for the season. So that's something to be wary going into next season as well.
So some other honorable mentions that kind of fit into this category of people that either drafted highly and have just kind of busted due to various reasons, or vice versa. Allen Robinson was a 3rd-round pick in most leagues. Not his fault why he's performing so badly. It's the team around him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I thought really highly of, got injured, was sort of having an up and down year, starting to turn around, but then had a terrible injury on one game. Raheem Mostert got injured on the first drive. Could have had a decent year if he didn't get hurt with the way that Elijah Mitchell has performed. Raheem Mostert could probably have been doing an even better job. Robert Woods, drafted highly, has kind of bounced back recently, but started off terribly. Cooper Kupp, who we all knew was going to be good. We did not expect him to be this good, is just making all of us feel bad if you took anyone right before him or right after him at wide receiver instead. DJ Moore is finally having this breakout year, at least in the first few weeks. Sam Darnold has really been taking that recently. And James Robinson, who everyone was not going to touch with a 20-yard stick because Urban Meyer, we all thought was going to bury him, it has been the opposite. James Robinson has been so good that he has buried Urban Meyer and forced the hand of just being the main guy in this offense.
They gave Carlos Hyde more carries to James Robinson the first week, and that was the worst decision they could have ever done in their lives, because James Robinson is an elite, I would say, high-end RB2, low-end RB1 right now. The man broke records last year as a rookie running back. He's going to continue to be a monster for the rest of the season. So if you got James Robinson, props to you.
Congrats. And as always, it's week 7. We're halfway through. So if you're in the middle of the pack, don't worry. A lot can happen in 7 weeks. And if you're at the bottom, this is crunch time. You need to go on a winning streak or you're kind of SOL. Don't worry about trying to get to the 1st or 2nd seed. You just need to be the last seed possible. So figure out how many playoff teams make it, figure out how many games behind you are from those teams, and that's your realistic shot. So let's, for example, say you're 2-5 or 1-6, as some of us out there might be in some leagues. If the 6th seed is only 3-4, or maybe they're 4-2 or 4-3, that means you're only 2 or 3 or maybe 4 games behind. There's still 7 games left to be played. You still have a shot.
It's unlikely.
Yep.
If you're 1-6 to start the season, but there's hope. There is hope. You better start trading away as much as you can. Start getting guys for low that you think are going to break out, because that's really the only way you're going to end up winning 7 straight games in a row to be able to make yourself back in the playoffs. Most of the time in fantasy football, teams that make the playoffs in the top 6 usually are about 500 or just above 500. So if you can get around that mark, you probably want to make the playoffs. But it's time to make those trades, time to make that push, get those free agent pickups out of there, because it's getting down to crunch time and we're almost halfway through the season.
All right, but as always, Brian, cheers.
Cheers.